Have you ever felt it? That invisible barrier. You work hard, you try to save, you do all the things you're supposed to do, but you're still stuck, still living paycheck to paycheck, watching others build wealth while you just tread water. For years, I felt like I was screaming inside a soundproof box. I could see the life I wanted, but I couldn't reach it. It wasn't a lack of effort or desire, it was a wall, an invisible wall made of fear, doubt, and lies I'd been told my whole life. A wall that was designed to keep me poor. And in this video, I'm not just going to show you that wall, I'm going to give you the sledgehammer. Welcome to Hope to Wealth. And my story is probably not that different from yours. It's a story about fighting for a better future, about feeling like the financial deck is stacked against you. For most of my life, I believed that wealth was a lottery ticket, something reserved for the lucky few. I couldn't understand why, no matter how hard I tried, I could never get ahead. It felt like a cruel joke. Then, one day, at my absolute lowest point, I realized the prison I was in wasn't made of iron bars. It was made of ideas. Ideas about money, about my own worth, and about what was possible for someone like me. I call it the invisible wall of poverty, and it's the single biggest obstacle standing between you and financial freedom. Today, I'm going to share the deeply personal story of how I discovered this wall, how I identified every single brick it was made of, and the exact steps I took to smash it to pieces and build a life of true wealth from the rubble. This isn't just a story, it's a blueprint. If you're ready to start building your own future, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button. You won't want to miss this. The foundation of the wall, my early money story. The first bricks of my wall were laid long before I was even aware of them. They were laid in the quiet conversations, the stressed sighs, and the unspoken rules of my childhood. I grew up in a home where money was a constant source of anxiety. It was the monster under the bed, the argument behind a closed door. We weren't destitute, but we lived on the edge of not enough. The phrase I heard most often was, "We can't afford that." It wasn't just a statement of fact, it became a statement of identity. It was the answer to a new bike, a school trip, a brand-name pair of sneakers. Over time, "we can't afford that" morphed into, "we are the kind of people who can't afford things." That's a crucial distinction. It's the difference between a temporary state and a permanent identity. My parents, good people who worked tirelessly, had their own invisible walls. They saw money as something you earned just to spend on necessities. The idea of money as a tool for growth, for freedom, was completely alien. Savings were for emergencies only, a small buffer against the inevitable disaster. Investing? That was gambling, something rich people did with money they could afford to lose. They taught me to be careful with money, but their definition of careful was rooted in fear, not strategy. It meant never taking risks, staying in a safe job even if it was a dead end, and being suspicious of any opportunity that seemed too good to be true. This created a powerful scarcity mindset. I saw the world as a place of limited resources where you had to grab your small piece and hold on tight. If someone else succeeded, it felt like there was less for me. I celebrated a 2% raise as a huge victory, never thinking to ask for 10%. I would spend hours driving across town to save $5 on groceries, completely blind to the fact that I could have used that time to learn a skill that could earn me thousands. These weren't conscious decisions, they were programmed responses. The bricks were being laid one by one. Money is the root of all evil. Rich people are greedy. It takes money to make money. Just be happy with what you have. Each one was a belief system, a limitation disguised as wisdom. They formed the foundation of a wall so perfectly integrated into my reality that I didn't even know it was there. I just thought it was the world. The first cracks. Hitting rock bottom. For years I lived within that wall, completely oblivious. I went to college, got a decent job, and followed the script. I bought a car on finance, racked up some credit card debt, and lived for the weekend. I was normal. But the foundation of scarcity I'd grown up with meant I was always on shaky ground. The slightest tremor could bring it all down. And it did. I was 28 years old. The company I worked for went through a restructuring, a sterile corporate term for shattering people's lives. I was laid off. Suddenly, the paycheck that had been the central pillar of my fragile financial life was gone. My emergency fund was a joke, barely enough to cover 1 month's rent. The car payments, the credit card bills, the student loans, they didn't stop. The anxiety I remembered from my childhood came roaring back, but this time, it was my own. I remember one specific night, about 2 months in. I had a stack of final notice bills on my kitchen table. My credit cards were maxed out. I was eating instant noodles for the third night in a row, and I had $47.18 in my bank account. I sat there in the dark, the red glow of the bill reminders on my phone illuminating the room, and I just broke. It wasn't just fear, it was a profound sense of shame. I had done everything I was told to do. I had worked hard, I'd been responsible, and here I was, a complete and utter failure. This was my rock bottom. It was in that moment of absolute despair that the first crack appeared in the wall. I started asking a different kind of question, not why me, but why does this keep happening? Why was my financial life a house of cards? Why were other people my age buying homes and investing while I was staring at financial ruin? For the first time, I considered that maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't the world. Maybe the problem was me. Maybe the rules I'd been playing by were wrong. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up with my laptop, not looking for jobs, but searching for answers. I started reading about personal finance, about budgeting, about investing. And slowly, painfully, I began to see the outline of the prison I had been living in my entire life. That moment of hitting rock bottom was the most painful experience of my life, but it was also the most important. It was the shock to the system I needed to finally wake up. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever felt that kind of financial despair, do me a favor and hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next part is where everything changes. Identifying the bricks, the mindset shift. Waking up to the wall was one thing. Understanding its construction was another. My late-night research turned into a full-blown obsession. I consumed every book, blog, and podcast I could find on wealth, mindset, and psychology. It was like I was an archaeologist excavating my own mind, and what I found was staggering. I started to give names to the bricks that had imprisoned me for so long. The first brick was the scarcity mindset. I didn't just lack money, I believed in a fundamental lack of everything. A lack of opportunity, a lack of good luck, a lack of my own potential. I saw every dollar I spent as a permanent loss, not an investment. This is why I'd buy cheap shoes that fell apart in 6 months instead of quality shoes that would last 5 years. I was optimizing for the short term because I couldn't fathom a long term where things were better. The second brick was victim mentality. It was always someone else's fault. The economy, my boss, the government, my upbringing. While those things certainly played a role, I used them as a shield to protect me from the terrifying truth that I had agency. I had choices. Blaming everyone else was easier than taking responsibility for my own financial situation. It absolved me of the need to change. The third brick, and this was a heavy one, was a deep-seated belief that I didn't deserve wealth. This was the echo of, "We're not those kind of people." I saw wealthy people on TV and felt a mix of envy and disdain. I subconsciously believed that to be wealthy, you had to be greedy, unethical, or just plain lucky. Since I considered myself a good, hard-working person, my mind created a conflict. I couldn't be both good and wealthy. So every time I got close to a financial breakthrough, I would subconsciously sabotage it. I'd get a bonus, and immediately spend it on something frivolous. I'd get a great job offer and find a reason not to take it. My identity was tied to the struggle. The fourth brick was financial ignorance as a defense mechanism. I told myself I was bad at math, or that investing was too complicated. The truth is, I was terrified. I was afraid to look at my bank statements, to create a budget, to face the reality of my debt. By claiming ignorance, I could avoid the pain of confronting my own mistakes. It was easier to stay in the dark. I literally wrote these down on a piece of paper: scarcity, victimhood, unworthiness, ignorance. These were the 4 pillars of my prison. Seeing them, naming them, was the most empowering moment of my life. It was the moment I realized the wall wasn't made of impenetrable stone. It was made of beliefs. And beliefs can be changed. I understood that my financial situation wasn't a reflection of my worth or my intelligence. It was a reflection of my programming. And I could write a new program. The first swing of the sledgehammer: taking radical responsibility. Knowing the wall's design was useless without a sledgehammer, and that sledgehammer was radical responsibility. This wasn't about blame, it was about empowerment. It was the decision to stop being a passenger in my own life and to grab the steering wheel with both hands. The first swing wasn't some grand gesture, it was small, almost laughably so. I sat down at that same kitchen table, with that same pile of bills, and I made a budget. For the first time ever. It wasn't a document of restriction, I reframed it as a plan for my freedom. I used a simple spreadsheet and listed every single source of income, which was 0 at the time, but I put in unemployment benefits and every single expense. Every single one. The $4 coffee, the streaming subscription I forgot I had, the bank fees. It was brutal. Seeing it all laid out in black and white was like looking in the mirror after years of avoidance. The numbers told a story of mindless spending and a complete lack of intention. But instead of shame, I felt a flicker of control. For the first time, I knew exactly where my money was going. This was my financial ground zero. My next swing was tracking my spending. I committed to writing down every dollar I spent for 30 days. It was tedious, but it was transformative. It forced a moment of mindfulness before every purchase. Do I need this? Or do I just want it? Does this purchase align with my goal of breaking free? More often than not, the answer was no. I started killing the death by 1,000 cuts expenses, the daily lattes, the takeout lunches, the subscriptions. It wasn't about depriving myself, it was about redirecting my resources. Every dollar I didn't spend was a dollar I could use to pay down debt, to build a real emergency fund. This was a direct assault on the scarcity brick. I was proving to myself that I could control my money, that I wasn't at its mercy. I was telling my money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Then came the debt. I had always viewed my debt as a single, terrifying monster. I broke it down. I listed every debt I had, from the largest student loan to the smallest credit card. Balance. I used the debt snowball method, focusing all my extra cash on paying off the smallest debt first, while making minimum payments on the others. When that first small credit card was paid off, the psychological victory was immense. It was proof, tangible proof that I could do this. I had taken a swing, and a chip of the wall had fallen away. It was a tiny chip, but it was a start. It was hope. If you're feeling stuck and want to take that first swing, let me know in the comments what your first step will be. And if you're getting value from this, please subscribe and hit the like button. Your support means the world and helps us reach more people who need to hear this message. Reinforcing the breach, the power of earning and saving. Taking control of my spending was the defensive strategy. It stopped the bleeding. But to truly smash the wall, I needed to go on offense. I needed to increase my income. The victim mentality. Brick screamed at me, "There are no jobs, the economy is terrible." I had to actively silence that voice. I reframed my job search. I wasn't just looking for a paycheck, I was looking for an opportunity. I started treating my job search like a job itself. 8 hours a day, I was networking on LinkedIn, tailoring my resume for each application and practicing for interviews. But I didn't stop there. I realized that relying on a single source of income was what made me so vulnerable in the first place. I started exploring side hustles. I was good at writing, so I signed up for a freelance platform. My first gig paid a measly $15 for an article. The old me would have scoffed, but the new me saw it differently. It wasn't $15, it was a victory. It was money I had created out of thin air on my own terms. It was a direct punch to the "I'm not worthy" brick. That $15 turned into $50, then $100. Within a few months, I was making an extra $500 a month writing in my evenings and weekends. Around the same time, I landed a new job. It wasn't my dream job, but it was a step up from my last one. And this time, I negotiated. I researched salaries, I built my case, and I asked for 15% more than their initial offer. They met me in the middle at 10%. The old me would have never dared. Now, here's the crucial part. As my income increased, I fought every instinct to upgrade my lifestyle. This is where most people fail. They get a raise, they buy a new car. Their income goes up, but so do their expenses, and they stay trapped. This phenomenon is called lifestyle inflation. I made a pact with myself. Every single dollar of extra income from my side hustle and my raise would go directly towards two goals: building a 6-month emergency fund and paying off my high-interest debt. I automated it. The day I got paid, money was automatically transferred to a high-yield savings account and sent as extra payments to my credit cards. I never even saw it in my checking account. Watching that savings account grow was like building a fortress. Each dollar was a stone in a new wall, a wall of security, not a wall of confinement. It was the opposite of the scarcity I grew up with. It was abundance. It was peace of mind. The feeling of knowing that if I lost my job again, I would be okay for 6 months. That feeling was worth more than any car or gadget I could ever buy. I was no longer just surviving. I was building, smashing through, the leap into investing. With my high-interest debt gone and a solid emergency fund in place, I had reached a new level. The constant grinding anxiety was gone. I had breathing room. I had options. But I knew that saving alone wouldn't build true wealth. My money was safe, but it wasn't working for me. It was just sitting there, losing value to inflation. The final and most intimidating brick in the wall was my fear of investing. The old programming screamed, "It's gambling. You'll lose everything. It's too complicated." That financial ignorance brick was the last line of defense for the poverty mindset. So I attacked it the same way I attacked the others, with education. I didn't try to become a Wall Street expert. I focused on the basics. I read books like The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins and I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. I learned about the power of compound interest, which Einstein supposedly called the eighth wonder of the world. I learned about low-cost index funds, which allow you to own a tiny piece of hundreds of the biggest companies in the world, diversifying your risk without needing to be a stock-picking genius. The concept was simple. Instead of trying to beat the market, you just own the market. Historically, despite all the crashes and recessions, the market has always gone up over the long term. This wasn't gambling. It was a disciplined long-term strategy. It was a bet on human ingenuity and progress. I opened a Roth IRA, a retirement account where my investments could grow tax-free. I'll never forget the day I made my first investment. I transferred $500 into my account and bought a single share of a total stock market index fund. My hand was literally shaking as I clicked the buy button. It felt monumental. For my entire life, I had been a consumer. I gave my money to companies. For the first time, I was an owner. I now owned a tiny fraction of Apple, of Microsoft, of thousands of other businesses. It fundamentally changed my relationship with money and the economy. When I saw news about companies doing well, I wasn't envious. I was a participant. That $500 was the final devastating blow to the invisible wall. It shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. Because now, I wasn't just earning money from my labor, I had an army of tiny dollar soldiers working for me, around the clock, even while I slept. The path was clear. I set up automatic investments for every single paycheck. It wasn't a huge amount at first, but it was consistent. And over time, as I watched it grow, the fear was replaced by excitement. I had finally escaped the prison. The wall was gone. Looking back, that person sitting in the dark, staring at $47 in his bank account, feels like someone from another lifetime. The journey from that kitchen table to a life of financial security wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. It was a fight. But the most important battle wasn't fought with my employers or the banks. It was fought between my own ears. The invisible wall wasn't external. It was built inside me, from the fears and limiting beliefs I had inherited and accepted as truth. Smashing it came down to a simple 4-part process. First, hitting rock bottom and finally opening my eyes to the prison I was in. Second, identifying the bricks of scarcity, victimhood, and fear. Third, taking radical responsibility and swinging the sledgehammer with small, consistent actions like budgeting and tracking. And finally, going on the offense by increasing my income and putting my money to work through investing. This blueprint isn't unique to me, it's available to you right now. Your wall might be made of slightly different bricks, but the tools to tear it down are the same. It starts with a decision. The decision to stop accepting your circumstances and start building your future. If this story has inspired you, please subscribe to Hope to Wealth for more stories to help you on your journey. Hit that like button to let me know it resonated. And now I want to hear from you. What is one brick in your invisible wall? Name it in the comments below. By sharing it, you take away its power. And finally, share this video with one person you know who needs to hear this message. Let's all start smashing some walls together.